Con. Okay, now we're recording. So we're the specialty division of Mercon, and Mercon Specialty is we're based in Seattle. I actually live down in Oregon, a little bit south of the Washington area. We love these opportunities with webinars to bring together different members of the Mercon team who have different sets of experience. As a part of Mercon, we work together all the time, and I think sometimes it's not as visible, the great connections that we have as we support each other through assisting our customers and working towards that goal that Mercon has to build a better coffee world. So really excited today that we have members from the Mercon Specialty team, as well as some of our colleagues down in Nicaragua who are able to join us today and assist in presenting this information to you. And I'll just say, I think that you all are getting the best of the best for information. The expertise that we have on the logistics and the operations side, moving coffee around, is just amazing. So I'm excited that they can share some of their knowledge and experience with you all. So that's me. I'm Emily. I work with Mercon Specialty. I work in sales. If you have any questions, after the event or any sort of follow-up information that I can send to you, please feel free to email me, and I will get your questions answered as soon as possible. I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues to give a short introduction to who you are and where you're located at and what kind of work you do. So Jason, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Emily. Hi, everybody. Thanks again for joining the webinar. So just a little bit about me. So I'm in operations supporting Mercon Specialty out of the Seattle, Washington area. I've been in operations between logistics and roasting and kind of everything manufacturing within coffee for the last 17 years, and work very closely with my colleague Ninoska and Felipe here, who will introduce themselves shortly. One of the things that I'll be talking about a little bit today specifically is how we handle coffee once it's arrived from origin and it actually lands here in the US. So the different steps that we take to get it from the port to our customers. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ninoska, and we'll finish our introductions and then get started on the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Ninoska. I'm a sales operations specialist within the Mercon Group, and most recently supporting the Mercon Specialty unit. So I've been in the truck and logistics team for a few years now, handling different type of contracts, different clients, only for the roaster side, but also now on the exporting side of the operations too. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Handing it over.
Great, thank you. Okay, hi, my name is Felipe Cam, and I've been with Mercon for the last 8 years. Very happy to be here. And I oversee the areas of technology and commercial operations. So I'll be giving you some kind of insights and highlights as to what's going on with the major disruptions that we are all experiencing in the world of supply chain. So hopefully I will give you some lights as to what's the vision, where are we going to, and where we're coming from in that regard. And looking forward to those slides. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Felipe. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and bring up our presentation here. All right, and just a thumbs up, guys, that we can see the presentation. Good job. All right. Okay, so I just want to review kind of quickly what our agenda is going to be, kind of what are we going to talk about. So there's really 4 main sections here that we'll kind of review. The first section is going to be from our origin. So this is kind of numbers 1 through 3 here. Where do we buy coffee from? The different processing steps, kind of at a glance. And then how we actually arrange everything to get to the shipper once we actually have coffee ready to go. From there, there's the exporting and importing process, and that's really steps 4 through 6 there. So we're just going to provide an overview of the shipping lines that we use, some of the different terms that you might see or come across in logistics, on contracts or other types of documentation. And then we'll get into the section of arrival. So once we've actually shipped everything and it arrives at a US port, so the different warehouses that we work with, the sampling that we do quality-wise there again, how we handle releases and shipping. And then finally, the last section is going to be the supply chain disruptions. And this is where Felipe is going to provide some information on the current outlook, kind of the impact that the pandemic has on the industry. And then we'll save some time for some Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to my colleague Ninoska, who will start us off with our origin.
Okay, yes, just a quick overview of the countries where we ship coffee from. For those of you who don't know, we actually operate in 10 different countries around the world. And some of them, let's say the half of them, we ship coffee from. We have origin offices there, which are the top countries that you see in the image, and now most recently, including Ethiopia as well. We have around 700 employees around the world, and we've been in operations for almost 7 years, starting in Nicaragua. That's the country that started it all for the Mercon Group, with our origin company, CISA. It's the exporter, and some of you, I'm sure, have received some of the great coffee that Nicaragua produces. So we have globally around 9,000 producers that we work with that source all the coffee that the Mercon Group trades throughout the year. So as I said, Nicaragua, it's been in the business for almost 7 years. And also Vietnam is other of our largest operations with over 20 years of experience in both, just to highlight something, right? We will not get in much detail, but just to give you like a briefly information and overview of our countries. But we have meals for both Arabica and Robusta coffees that we work with. And in the image, you can see some other of the countries that we ship coffee from. Not exclusively, but that's let's say like the majority of them. Can we go? Okay. Here we can see the steps overview of the shipping process. That's usually how we work. We enter the contract, we apply, if it's pre-sold, we apply, the purchase versus the sale. It can be, either of our origin countries or any other third-party exporter that we work with. And the sale could be around the world, US, Canada, Europe, any country. Basically, we have shipped to Asia, to the Caribbean, South America, you name it. So, well, the first step in the exporting chain would be to contact the shipper. We provide the shipping instructions once we have determined where the coffee is going, all of the documents requirements. We request per shipment sample, which may be in the US or Europe, which is the other importing office that we have. And once the coffee has been approved by the lab or even the buying client, we give like the green light to the exporter, right? To follow up with the process, to work on getting a booking confirmation for the shipment date. And then, it's just like a follow-up process of, getting the documents in time, everything is correct, the coffee is shipped, and we enter all of the information that is related to the shipment into our system and send that information to the destination warehouse or client that is going to receive the coffee. Once the coffee gets to destination, the warehouse picks up the coffee, stores it, and then we can start the delivering process with arrival samples and releases that we're going to discuss further. Here's a brief image that you can see about the process that I described. We have the pre-shipment sample sent to one of Mercon's labs. We get the quality team approve it, and then we send the results to the exporter. So either if it's approval or a rejection, if it's a rejection, we will need to get replacement samples and continue the process. So as soon as the sample is approved, the lot is ready to be shipped. And just to give you a brief idea, we have on the timeline that this process takes. The pre-shipment sample usually takes about 5-10 days average from the shipment from the exporter to be cupped and results to be provided. The shipper usually takes about 48 hours to get booking confirmation from the shipping line. And well, this is speaking, like if everything goes well. Of course, there are some exceptions that Felipe will comment later, with all the global situation that we have right now. But in theory, that is usually the time that it takes. So the containers, once the coffee is ready, loaded and everything, the containers need to be at the port of loading 48 hours prior the vessel departing. And the documents need to be ready as well, and should take about 2 or 3 days to be ready. And transit times, of course, varies depending on the origin and destination. But just to give you some examples, we have, for example, Nicaragua going to the US West Coast, taking about 28, 30 days. For Brazil, for example, to West Coast takes longer. It could be from 40 to 50 days, or if it's going to the East Coast, it might take 20, 25 days. From Central America, for example, to the East Coast or to Houston, it's a short shipment time, about 5 days. So of course it depends, but just to give you some examples of the transit times. And once the coffee has arrived in the destination warehouse, it may take, let's say, usually between 7 and 10 days for pickup and delivery, although it may take up to 15 days. Sometimes ports are congested, or it depends on either transportation availability or the destination warehouse availability to receive the coffee. And once it's there, they may take 1 to 2 days to unload the coffee and store it. Here you can see some examples of the shipping lines that we use. Not all of them, but just some of them that are the most globally recognized shipping lines that we work with. And we have different terms for our contracts. The Incoterms, it varies. The coffee that we buy from, we buy on term FOB, and usually the sales, well, they vary a lot. We have FOB, CIF, FOTX warehouse, which is the majority of the contracts going to the US. FOB, not all of them, but the majority, I would say FOB shipments are going to Europe, but we have some clients in the US as well. You must be most familiar with it, as this is the way that you get the coffee, either FOT or a warehouse or delivered, where it varies on the responsibility of who's paying for the insurance, the freight, or the trucking, and who arranges the customs clearance. All of that is rolled by this Incoterms. Now, once coffee has been shipped, we have, as previously mentioned, we have the documentation to get ready and to be sent to the destination for clearance. Most important would be the bill of lading, which is the title of the coffee. It says where it's going, where it's coming from, who is the owner of the coffee, or who should be receiving the coffee and getting it in the destination, and all other details that you can see in our documents, like the container number, ICO marks, and usually have also the description of the coffee and the weights of the coffee as well. All other documents that are required are the invoice, commercial invoice, phytosanitary certificate. It depends usually either on the country of destination or client's requirement. It's not usually required in the US, but sometimes clients want to have it. We have the certificate of origins, quality, weight, fumigation if required as well, and so many other that may depend on the quality of coffee. For example, and I'm sorry it's not mentioned here, but some certifications as well, UZ or RFA, depending on the coffee that we're selling. Now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Ninoska. That was a great overview and a lot of steps in the whole process to get it to the port. So just kind of picking up from here, after that long travel over the water, we will land it in a port, and we have warehouse. We partner with 3PL warehouses everywhere in Europe, US, Canada, truly an international company. Some of the cities that we've listed here are just some of the major cities, some of the major hubs where we're going to be storing a lot of our coffee for different clients, just kind of situationally to make sure that we can hit everywhere that we need to in terms of supply. One of the first steps that we need to take when we're receiving it before it can even get to the warehouse is, as Ninoska mentioned, it's got to go through a series of customs clearance, sometimes USDA inspections. So when it arrives at port, it doesn't just immediately come over the warehouse. It usually takes a couple days, and there can be exceptions depending on congestion of the port and other types of things. but that needs to happen first. Once we get that clearance, then we work with our warehouses. You can see some of the ones that we've listed out here to actually provide the drayage service. And drayage is just a term to take kind of big full containers and get them to a location. So this wouldn't be the standard kind of 53-foot trailers that you would normally see just traveling the road. This would be taking the ocean freight container, loading it onto a specialized truck and getting it somewhere. So that'll take a little bit of time. It gets to the warehouse, and the warehouse might take a day or two just to devan the whole thing and receive it in. So typically we're looking at about a week once it hits from port to availability and be able to release to our customers. But one of the things that happens as soon as we have it available and the warehouse tells us and informs us that it's good to go is we get our arrival samples. So we always request 2 different sets of samples. So the first set is going to be a quality sample, and this is for our own internal quality control approvals. We match the tasting notes against what we had determined from the pre-ship samples. We make sure that nothing's changed, that everything is still matching the quality that we're expecting. And then in addition, we'll get a client sample. So this is if the coffee has been pre-sold, this will go to our clients, and or it could be used for distribution, public cuppings, but those are the 2 sets of samples. We make sure that the coffee is not immediately released until we're able to go through that quality control process internally as well as with our clients. But once it is approved, then the release can be given. And this is just a little bit about our shipping capabilities. So we offer full service options for all LTL and FTL shipping, and these LTL stands for less than truckload, and FTL is full truckload. So whether we're shipping 1 bag on a pallet, or we're shipping a full 320 bag floor loaded container, we can handle everything. And we partner with Worldwide Express. Worldwide Express is a global leader in, they give us to national and regional carriers that are reliable and well reputed in the industry. In addition, we get economies of scale. So we have big rate discounts with all of these newly recognized carriers, simply because of the volume that we're able to contribute to Worldwide, and the volume that Worldwide does with all of these carriers as well. Worldwide Express actually is the largest account for RNL, and many of you guys are familiar with RNL. They're a national carrier. Worldwide is also the #1 account for UPS small parcel shipping, or I should say second. They're second only to Amazon when it comes to partnering with UPS. And UPS Ground Freight, that's in transition right now, but they're also part of the list of national carriers. Some of the other options that we have just working with Worldwide and their access to many different suppliers or many different carriers, guaranteed delivery options. So if there's a need to have your coffee there at a certain time, we have options to see for different routes. Can we get a delivery guarantee option, which is great. Not all 3PL brokerage platforms offer that. So this makes it very easy for us to make sure that we can expedite service when we need to. In addition to some other things, we have a service track record, these carriers, so we are able to identify quickly when a carrier is starting to have maybe some issues back up at their terminals, or any other type of shipping issue that might occur. And together with the dedicated staff at Worldwide, we can quickly pivot and know which carriers we need to be using when. So it's a good feedback system within this whole platform. And I mentioned Unishippers down there. Many of you guys are probably familiar with Unishippers. And if you work with Unishippers or any of these carriers, we can also coordinate just directly with a carrier of choice as well. So that way it saves you all that shipping hassle and need to do all the documentation and pickup and delivery coordination and all that. And that's basically the process there. Just again, timeline overview would be about a week for be able to release, either ship it or release it to the account of our clients. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and kick things over to Felipe to talk about some of the supply chain things that we're seeing now.
Yes, thank you, Jason. And so basically, what I try to do is give you some bullets to kind of explain what are we going through right now and how we can explain that. So basically, everybody's aware that we're facing major disruption in our entire supply chain, which is causing for, in our case, and with any other commodity or final goods, a major delay, and so that we can deliver our coffee to our clients, okay? And I have never experienced that. I don't think we have ever experienced a COVID, at least our generation, like this. But just trying to keep a little bit of memory, and I never forget last year, it was March or April, we were at the NCA in different countries, different states, but starting to hear words on this pandemic, and we all came back a little worried, scared on the airplanes home. I'm in Miami, and basically after that, we all know that the pandemic started to expand, and at that time, from March, April until July, August, and we would just hear everything about how the supply chain would be impacted by the infections, either at the port level, either at the mill. But luckily, they were kind of being handled in a very positive way that we learned to cope with that. Okay, so towards the end of the year, we learned that the vaccination was getting closer, and that demand was going to go up. Up until that time, we had dealt with a lower demand and also an exercise, and that the major shipping lines implemented to exercise, which were called the blank sailings, which they were pretty much skipping runs, so to speak, and the entire capacity kind of shrunk. Okay, but again, towards the end of the year, and companies realized that demand will go up again. So and people would start spending increasingly out of the normal way, especially with the biggest incentive given by the United States, and so that's when we started seeing those biggest delay of shipment from the major ports, as you can see on my first bullets. The business continued to restock significantly, and just to face that increasing demand, especially in the US, okay? And look at the third bullet, interesting enough, only the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, they're adjacent ports in California, they both handle a third of all the US imports coming through the ocean. Only those two ports, they saw a combined increase of 97% in March compared to the same months last year. And so we're talking about 900,000 containers, okay? The higher demand drove higher prices. So supply and demand rules, right? So higher demand, higher prices. So you can see there, for example, that's was reported a 40-foot sea container from China to US West Coast, was quoted at 5,650 during this month, according to the Baltic Index. And that is a 35% higher than in January and 230% higher than the same month last year. In our case, in our organization, we've been experiencing kind of the same way, for all the different origins that we deal with, mostly from Vietnam and from Brazil, for example, okay? But the rates, for example, from Vietnam have gone up tremendously. I remember last year, we would see clients willing to pay premiums up to $7,000, $8,000 just for transportation of coffee from Ho Chi Minh to the US. Okay, so that's how difficult this became. Obviously, toward the end of the year, the disruption was already in place, and that's when our biggest headache started, and our transit time started to spend. You can see in the pictures there at the bottom, especially the last two, that was published by the Wall Street Journal. In the first picture, it was normal before pandemic, and the vessels waiting in the port. And then during this time, you can see the amount of vessels kind of cramming, and waiting. And that's kind of the biggest deal that we're experiencing now. Why? Because simply all different containers are kind of stuck at the port level, and they take a long time to go back to the origin countries, and that's when the entire chain gets completely disrupted. Okay, next page, please, Jason. So, getting also with other statistics to better understand, U.S. total imports for March, 3 million TEUs. TEUs are 20 footers long equivalent units. Those are the most popular container sizes. 51% more than the same month last year. Look at that big increase in demand. It's interesting, but again, like I said, I live in Miami. I remember a few months ago, I was with my wife at one of the retail stores buying something for my daughter. And believe it or not, we kind of experienced that we felt like we were kind of in the December kind of month, where there's a lot of bonuses and money, but there were lots of lines, just a few months ago. So obviously, the country received a lot of incentive from the government, and that also exacerbated the situation in the increase in demand. Okay. So you can see there also that a statistic for last year in the second bullet, largest shipping lines reduced the shipping capacity by 13%, okay, to meet the decline in demand by 13%, also 13 and 13. So they kind of figured it out, and they started with this black sailings practice to kind of face the lower demand. Okay, but ever since in the last quarter, here it says June, but the rates starting to increase a little bit, to the point that again, we were not able to get regular rates, but in some cases, we needed to go to the premium market, and that's when you can go really crazy, and depending on the situation, you can really spend premiums up to $3,000-4,000. Okay. And obviously, some companies win during this situation. Maersk, the largest ship container operated with around 17% of total world capacity, reported a record net profit for the first quarter of $2.1 billion. And that compared to $197 million that they were kind of used to do, and that's what they did in the first quarter of last year. Look at that big difference. It's kind of mind-boggling, because and that if you start thinking about all the premium that you had to pay to go through, where was it going? Was it going to the largest shipping companies for sure? And that's why you see that big number. Next, please. Just to give you kind of some kind of environment, how the game looks like, and there's been a lot of consolidation of shipping lines, to the point that now we have only 3 largest alliances, and they represent 80% of the total ocean shipping volume. Who are they? They're called the 2M, the Ocean Alliance, and the Alliance. Okay, and you can see that the first one is formed by Maersk Mediterranean Shipping Company. You got the Alliance, which is formed by Ocean Network Express, Hapag-Lloyd, and Yang-Ming. And then you got Ocean Alliance, which is a CMA, COSCO, and Evergreen Line. So it's amazing, but very few players dominating the entire industry of shipping, you know, and we got to deal with only those few companies. For us, it's only just this few that we've been working through for the last few years. Okay. And look at that also, Hapag-Lloyd, you know, one of the most popular companies, reported also 1.45 billion net profits, okay, for the first quarter, compared to 27 million last year. At the same time, and this is the part where it kind of gets interesting, because again, like I mentioned, one of the biggest factors for the big demand was that people like me decided to stay home, and a lot of people diverted money from entertainment, for example, going to concerts or anything, or restaurants. We just started remodeling kitchens and buying electronics and so forth. So we kind of cramped the entire import situation. But hopefully that situation is starting to stabilize. You know, with the vaccine, people are starting to go out. There are more restaurants, are consumption, more concerts, I think, is starting to show up. So that's why, and it is expected that the entire situation start to ease. Probably it'll continue to be a little challenging, but it's expected for the last quarter of this year, hopefully, and I'm crossing my fingers that we can start getting to the stabilization period, because to be honest with you, this situation is so challenging, you know, because we have so many commitments with our clients, and sometimes it's really difficult, and we got to go into premium markets, and we get a lot of cancellations and rollovers over bookings, and that makes our entire work very, very difficult. Okay, and so we'll see what happens. Let's hope that again, for July, August, the situation starts to ease. You know, at least we can see that light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. I also wanted to mention other factors, because it's not everything is about COVID-19. Okay, so we're used to many other factors that are constantly giving us all the challenges in our day-to-day work. You know, for example, in November last year, we had two major hurricanes, Eta and Iota, you know, that ravaged the Central America, Colombia, in Central American countries. Okay, and if you recall, if you heard, they were Category 4 and Category 5. So that also impacted our on-time deliveries, you know, KPIs, and you know, and we had to unfortunately expand our transit times due to those situations. We also had some rail strikes in Canada, that a very difficult situation that impacted us as well. And every time something like that happens, you know, and we know that we're going to be in trouble, and our time for delivery is going to be delayed. Okay, and last month there was another threat of another strike in Canada. Luckily, the government was able to handle it, you know, but definitely we had very nervous clients for that situation. We had the Suez Canal, and everybody probably read on the news what happened there. Interestingly enough, I was looking at some KPIs, and we had one shipment from Africa to Europe, which normally would take 30 to 40 days. It took us 81 days, you know, just because the Suez Canal situation or accident. And so accidents also happen, that they will also impact our on times KPIs, but and that's something that I always say we got to deal with that constantly, you know. But that just exacerbated the entire disruption that we've been experiencing for the last year, and when it comes to these disruptions, you know. Another
Felipe?
important, yes.
We have a question in the chat box, and it says, is Hamburg Süd an independent shipper and not one of the big three alliances? Do they fare better for it?
Can you say it again, please? I couldn't hear well.
Yes. Is Hamburg Süd an independent shipper and not part of one of the big three alliances, do they fare better for it?
Hamburg Süd is part of Humber line and part of one of these alliances, and definitely part of the entire situation. They're all going through the same situation, and it's not just that the one has fared better than the other one. This is a common situation for everybody. If somebody would tell me, "Hey, go with this company or their company because they're doing better," it's very difficult. We try every single company out there, and kind of the results are kind of the same. Okay. So bottom line, since 2000, the average vessel size of container ship has more than doubled. You know, the capacity continues to expand. I was talking to a major executive from DHL. He was telling me that he expects an expansion of global capacity, for example, in the US between 4 and 7% this year, you know, and will help alleviate the situation. So I think this is the last bullet, Jason, or we have another one?
Felipe, do you want to touch just quickly on the Colombia situation?
Yeah. Well, the Colombia situation is another very interesting case. And again, it's different from the COVID, but it's one of those first major situations where, again, oh no, not only do we have this big disruption because of COVID and the higher demand, but now we have the Colombia situation, which started as a normal kind of just one strike to protest against some tax reforms going on in the country, but it evolved into a major situation, and it hasn't stopped for several weeks. Obviously that has impacted us on the delivery of coffee from Colombia. And the situation there is completely uncertain because we don't know if it's going to end next week or it's going to be prolonged for more weeks. In the meantime, we also have key clients that are extremely concerned because they don't know what's going to happen with the coffee that they are supposed to receive in the next 1, 2, or 3 months. Okay, and that's another force majeure that we're dealing with. Again, totally different from, well, not totally different, but it's kind of associated because it all started that the government from Colombia decided to kind of make a reform in their tax system to deal with the major expenditure of vaccines and all the different policies and tasks that they did related to the pandemic. But again, unfortunately, that backfired then, and the population did not like it, and that's where everything started. But from our point of view, how it impacted us is that and the coffee that we need to deliver to our clients, unfortunately, has been impacted. Now, luckily, I mean, the amount of coffee that we bring from Colombia to North America and Europe is relatively smaller compared to the coffee from Brazil or Vietnam or other Central American countries. But still, Colombia is a very important origin for us. And we're definitely hoping that the situation can really improve, and the government and the people can really come to an agreement. Okay, but that's another force majeure that we're dealing with, and it's just exacerbating the entire situation. Okay, and I think that's what I have basically for my bullets, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, me or anybody of the ones that.
And I'll just pop in just real quick just to clarify. So the German shipping container, Hamburg Süd, is actually owned by Maersk. So they're part of the 2M alliance as well.
Yep.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. If we have any questions, if anybody has any questions on topics covered or something that you were hoping to hear, but maybe didn't hear in the presentation, feel free to put a question into the chat box and we will get those answered for you. One thing that I thought was really interesting from the presentation is when we're talking about timelines, there's so many different steps that go into everything, into getting the coffee moving. And the farther that origin country is away, we add days on to everything, shipping samples, trying to get coffee, in transit. So it's really interesting sometimes when we see a little problem, and then the next piece in the line has a little problem, and it can kind of cascade. Ninoska, I wanted to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, can you tell me, how do you track when a coffee is actually going to be set to arrive? Because I know sometimes a coffee gets on the water and it's said that it's going to arrive at a certain day, and then we start getting other dates. So what's going on when that coffee is on the water, and how are you tracking that?
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, when we enter the information in the system, we of course have all the database for the shipments, all different statuses of where in the process that contract is. And in the case of the coffee that is afloat, we do like weekly follow-ups, on the arrival date in this case. Usually all the shipping lines have their own websites where you can track down the shipments using the bill of lading number. And that's where we determine, if it's on time, if it's arriving sooner or later than the original ETA that we had. Sometimes while on the way to the destination, it gets delayed. For example, if a long route, let's say coffee coming from Vietnam to the US, and it needs to do a transshipment somewhere, or from South America, and it will stop, let's say, in Mexico or Panama, there could be additional delays, in the transshipment port for different reasons. And we've had cases where the containers have been just left out, in the transshipment port. So that obviously delays all the transit time and the arrival at destination. But basically, we have the information in our system. We have reports, and it's a follow-up that we do continuously, just to know when we can really expect the coffee to arrive.
Thank you so much. I know that another thing that we've been dealing with is sometimes a coffee gets booked, like we want it to go to Seattle, but then we find out after we think that it's about to go, we find out that it is not going to make it to Seattle, and you have to, in a big hurry, find another destination port for that coffee to go to. So I was just kind of wondering how much that's been impacting things on your side for trying to ship it. And when you have to change those ports for destination, does it involve changing all the paperwork and everything else with it as well?
Well, if the paperwork needs to be prepared in advance of the shipment, but the exporter should know in advance if the coffee is not going to be shipped out, because as I had mentioned, the coffee needs to arrive in the port a couple of days before the ETS. So if by any reason, and it's happening a lot in the current situation, we have a global critical situation with the shipment. We have a lack of equipment. We have lack of vessels capacity, and we've been having a lot of rollings in the bookings, as you mentioned, actually. So it shouldn't affect the paperwork, but it's just like resending the instructions. It may be to either change the port of destination, or it may be to change the shipping line to see, who has availability to ship sooner than the other. Although, of course, we have to take into consideration the rate, the transit time. Sometimes it varies depending on the shipping line because they may or not do a transshipment in the way. So it varies, but it's doable. It's doable as long as the coffee has not been shipped yet. If the transit time is long or if it's going to be a transshipment, we've had cases where the destination is changed along the way, and in that case, yes, we need to change the paperwork. Let's say it's on the water and then you decided to change from Norfolk to New York. So, it's like starting the process all over while the coffee is on the water. And in that case, yes, there would be paperwork changes, which of course include extra fees as well.
So I got a couple of questions here that probably I can answer. And one of them says, how long are the delays at U.S. ports from the time the ship reaches the port to the time it actually unloaded into a warehouse? That's a really good question. And it all depends what port we're talking about. So biggest delays are experienced on the east side, anything that going to Canada, New York, and experiencing a lot of heavy delay time. And there only 3-4 months ago, all the coffee that we were sending to Canada via Philadelphia, for example, they would get stuck in Philadelphia for 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, and last time we heard, and that process was taking 1 week. Okay, so starting to improve, but then basically because the bottleneck was so big that, and then they had this situation of rails strikes and all that worsened the situation. But there was a time where the Philadelphia port was really at a frozen situation, and things were moving very slowly. Okay, and now if the same thing happens with LA, okay, not only we were experiencing the delays because of the bottleneck, but also we were experiencing a lot of examination from the government there in the port of LA, so that would increase the number of days that they would get stuck, and so that we can deliver to our clients in that area, and they can stay up to two weeks in that situation. There are other ports which is much easier to deliver. For example, the NOLA. Okay, so we've seen the New Orleans port is much easier. Now we're seeing that our shipments over to that area is kind of flowing in a much faster way instead of going to Canada or going to LA, because the situation we explained, a lot of bottlenecks in those, because those are again, and only again, like I explained, the LA port along with the Long Beach, they kind of get 33% of the entire shipments. Okay, so definitely the bottlenecks are there huge. You were able to see the pictures. So 3 weeks, the most, that we could experience for a different situation. There have been cases going to New York. I heard the other day from one of the girls that the coffee arrived and immediately left. So in 2 or 3 days. So you see, definitely you could expect 2 weeks. Now, the other question is, how do you deal with all these extra costs, expensive ocean freights, delays at port with demurrages, and increased tracking fees? Is this absorbing the operation of this pass along to customers? That's a good question. Like never before, for example, we were experiencing this examination. Why? Simply because it was well known that obviously the mafias took advantage of the situation. They tried to smuggle more drugs through the ocean. So the ports, especially in LA, would be extremely scrutinizing all the different shipments, especially coming from all the different Latin American countries. So making it a much more difficult for us, and would spend lots of money in just examinations. Definitely that's considered a cost for us. We definitely in the majority of cases we try to pass it along, make it part of our cost. In some other cases, depending on the relationship with our clients, we end up absorbing also part of those costs. Okay, so definitely it's being a little bit of both things. but at the end, the cost increases, and it's kind of a part of our secondary cost, so to speak. And that's how we need to kind of update our prices as well. Okay.
I just thought maybe while we're looking, if there's any questions or anything like that, I thought I'd bring up just a cool website that gives you a sense of just all the different traffic that's kind of going on in the world, ocean-wise. So this contains all the vessels that are being tracked globally for marine. This is not just, you know, full-size container cargo ships, but it's also fishing vessels and everything. You can see 280 or 38,000 vessels, but it just kind of gives you, you know, an overview, kind of how much is actually going on just at any one time. And as Felipe was saying, I wanted to just underline the really popular ports up in the Northeast, and just how weather and just, you know, just a little bit of congestion really creates a ripple effect, you know, for the rest of ports and shipments. Anyway, I just thought it was it's always interesting to see just how much activity is actually out there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jason. You mentioned the word ripple effect, and it's interesting because it's not only important how long does the shipment get stuck at the final destination, at the final port, but it's also how long is it stuck either in the original port or during the transshipment. So for example, we've got coffee that could go to New York, but could stop in Cartagena. You know, and we've seen, for example, a lot of delays. In some cases, we've seen up to 2 weeks stuck our shipment in Cartagena, simply because, not because necessarily the situation is difficult in Cartagena, but they need to wait. And because the final port could be LA, could be New York, and it's really in a bottleneck situation. So that's why transit times, we're talking about 40, 50, 60 days of transit time, when usually it could be 40 days, for example, okay? And 2 or 3 weeks, you can consider a delay, but you gotta always look at that wide picture, okay? Because the delays that we see constantly are happening in the beginning, in the middle time, and also in the final destination. But it's a ripple effect. Everything is completely impacted.
Thank you guys so much for explaining that. And Jason, thank you so much for showing this picture. I know I've seen it before, and it always just amazes me to think about how many vessels are out there right now, and how many are so close to port, like just waiting or sitting out there waiting for their spot to come in, or sitting and waiting to go out. So thank you guys so much. I just want to take another second to thank our team so much, Jason, Ninoska, and Felipe. They worked so hard on this presentation for you, and I'm so appreciative that they were able to take time to share their expertise with all of you. If you have any questions that pop up after this webinar, and you'd like some additional information, if you'd like to connect with somebody in logistics to find out more, to learn more about the logistics services that Mercon Coffee can offer you, if you'd like to connect with somebody on Mercon Specialty and find out about some of the coffees that we have that are already here and actually available and can ship out, feel free to give me an email. I'd love to connect you with somebody on our team who can answer your questions and be of assistance. So on behalf of Mercon Specialty and Mercon Coffee, thank you all so much for taking your time today to join us. And I just want to let everyone know that next month we will kind of be piggybacking off of this logistics webinar. We are going to do a special collaborative webinar with one of our favorite warehouses to talk about green coffee storage and how the coffee is managed within the warehouse. So It should be a fantastic webinar, and I look forward to seeing you all there. You can also look forward to seeing an email with an invitation showing up to you shortly. So thank you all very much for coming, for spending your time with us, and for being part of our effort to make a better coffee world. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.